It all started on a quiet Tuesday evening, one of those days where everything just felt a little off. My husband, Jason, was working late again, third time that week, and I had spent the whole day juggling meetings, emails, and trying to hold myself together. I remember standing in the kitchen, staring at the clock, wondering if he'd even make it home for dinner. I wasn't angry, just tired. Tired of being invisible. Tired of feeling like I was slowly fading into the background of my own life. That night, I wasn't expecting company. But around 7:45, the doorbell rang. It was Marcus, our neighbor from 2 floors down. He had come up under the pretense of borrowing a toolbox, but something in his tone felt a little too friendly. I knew Marcus was recently divorced and always a bit too charming for my taste, but I figured a few minutes of polite conversation wouldn't hurt. We ended up talking about how life had changed, how routines get boring, how people start drifting apart. There was something strangely comforting in his words, like he actually saw me when he looked at me, something Jason hadn't done in a long time. We moved from the doorway to the living room, just sitting and chatting. Nothing more. Or at least, that's what I kept telling myself. It was innocent. Just 2 lonely people sharing thoughts over a glass of wine. I mentioned the crick in my neck from sitting at my desk all day, and before I could say no, Marcus offered to help. I used to give my ex the best shoulder massages, he said, smiling in that familiar, easygoing way. I hesitated for a second. There was a voice inside me whispering that this wasn't a good idea, but another part of me, maybe the part that hadn't felt touched or cared for in months, didn't resist. I turned around and let him place his hands on my shoulders. His touch was firm but not aggressive, slow and careful, as if he knew exactly how much tension I'd been carrying. At first, it really did feel innocent. I was grateful. Relaxed, even. But then, something shifted. The room felt warmer. The silence between us grew heavier. His hands lingered a second too long. And the look in his eyes when I turned around wasn't just friendly anymore. My heart started racing, not because I was scared, but because I knew what was happening, and I wasn't stopping it. In that moment, it was like everything I'd buried under routine, stress, and loneliness came rushing to the surface. I should have pulled away. I should have told him to leave. But I didn't. I couldn't. And then he leaned in, close enough that I could feel his breath on my neck, and what he did next didn't just catch me off guard, it left me completely frozen. I didn't know it then, but that single moment would change everything. Not just between me and Marcus, but between me and Jason, and even how I saw myself. I froze. Not because I was scared, but because for the first time in a long while, I didn't know what I wanted. Marcus's hand brushed my hair gently aside, his voice low as he asked if I was okay. I nodded without thinking, but inside my mind was spinning. The lines were starting to blur, and I wasn't sure where comfort ended and something else began. My heart pounded in my chest as I sat there, feeling like I was floating outside of myself, watching a version of me I didn't recognize. A knock at the door would have saved me. A phone call. Anything to snap me out of it. But the world stayed silent. Marcus didn't say another word, just kept his hands on my shoulders like he was waiting for me to make a move. Or maybe he already knew I wouldn't. The truth is, I didn't stop him because deep down, I had already crossed a line the moment I let him in. That night didn't end with anything dramatic, but the silence that followed was louder than anything else. When Marcus left, he didn't say much. Just a small smile, a quiet goodnight, and the door closed behind him like a secret being locked away. I stood there in the middle of the room, unsure of what had just happened, unsure of myself. The guilt didn't come right away. At first, I tried to convince myself that nothing really happened. But something had changed, and I could feel it in how I looked at Jason when he finally came home later that night. I studied his face, his tired eyes, the way he barely glanced at me before heading to the shower. I wondered if he could tell. If I had carried something into the room with me, something invisible but loud enough to be felt. The next morning, everything seemed normal on the surface, but I felt different. Every little thing Jason did irritated me, his rushed goodbye, his half-hearted love you, the way he didn't notice I hadn't slept. And Marcus, he sent a simple text around noon. "Hope your shoulders are feeling better." That was it. Nothing flirty. Nothing inappropriate. But just seeing his name on my screen sent a wave of emotions through me that I didn't know how to process. I tried to forget it, to shove it to the back of my mind. But the more I tried, the more it followed me, like a shadow I couldn't shake. I told myself it was harmless. That I didn't actually do anything wrong. But deep down, I knew something had started. And it wasn't going away. Over the next few days, I kept going through the motions, making breakfast, replying to work emails, folding laundry, yet everything felt slightly off, like I was living on a different frequency. Jason barely noticed. Or maybe he did, and just didn't care enough to ask. Either way, I didn't bring it up. We had gotten used to avoiding hard conversations. That quiet distance between us had grown so slowly over time. Neither of us realized how far apart we were until someone else stepped into the space. But it wasn't just about Marcus anymore. It was about me. I kept asking myself why that moment affected me so deeply. Why someone else's hands had stirred something in me that Jason hadn't in months. Maybe it wasn't just about attraction. Maybe it was about attention. Being seen. Being noticed. I hadn't felt that in so long, I forgot how much I craved it. One evening, as Jason sat on the couch watching a basketball game, I finally asked him if he wanted to talk about anything. He barely looked up. "Not now, babe. Just tired." That's all he said. And just like that, the wall between us got thicker. I watched him for a moment, thinking how strange it felt to miss someone who was sitting right next to you. Meanwhile, Marcus had gone quiet too. No more texts, no unexpected visits. It was like he had dropped a match and walked away, leaving me with the smoke. But the real twist came when I bumped into his ex-wife, Angela, in the building's laundry room. We'd exchanged a few friendly hellos in the past, but this time she looked at me a little too long. "Hope Marcus isn't bothering you," she said casually, folding a towel. I gave a nervous laugh, trying to play it off, but something about her tone made my skin crawl. What did she mean by that? Later that night, I kept replaying her words. Was there more to Marcus than I knew? Was I just a name on a list to him, a routine he repeated with other women craving attention? The idea of being just another story in his collection made me sick. I thought I had control. I thought I made that choice. But now I wasn't so sure. And yet, the real question I kept avoiding was harder to face. If Jason had noticed anything at all, would it have even mattered to him? The following weekend, something shifted. Jason came home earlier than usual on Friday night. No calls, no texts, just walked through the door while I was still in my robe, hair wet, a towel around my shoulders. He looked surprised to see me like that, like he wasn't expecting me to be home. I asked if everything was okay, and he mumbled something about a cancelled meeting. I noticed how quickly he avoided eye contact, how he kept checking his phone when he thought I wasn't looking. Something about him felt off. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay there next to him, staring at the ceiling, the weight of everything finally pressing down. My mind was racing, Marcus, the silence between me and Jason, Angela's strange warning. None of it made sense, but all of it felt connected somehow. I got up around 2 a.m. and walked to the living room, needing air, needing space. As I reached for my phone, I saw a notification, a message from an unknown number. It read, "He's not who you think he is. Be careful." I froze. My first thought was Marcus. My second, Jason. The message didn't say a name, but it didn't have to. My world was already spinning, and now someone had just poured gasoline on the fire. The next morning, I tried to stay calm. I didn't bring it up right away. I needed to figure out who had sent the message. I didn't delete it. I showed it to no one. Instead, I played it cool. Smiled. Cooked breakfast. Pretended like everything was fine. Meanwhile, inside, I was unraveling. Around noon, I walked to the grocery store, needing to get out. And that's when I saw them, Jason and a woman I didn't recognize, standing too close near the coffee shop across the street. They weren't touching, but their body language said enough. The kind of closeness that doesn't happen overnight. My heart dropped. I ducked behind a parked car, breath caught in my throat. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run up and ask him how long it had been going on. But I didn't. I just stood there, gripping my phone, shaking. When I got home, I didn't say a word. I sat down in the kitchen, staring at my reflection in the black screen of the microwave. I thought I was the one caught in a mess. But maybe I wasn't the only one hiding something. Maybe I wasn't the only one feeling invisible. I sat at the kitchen table for what felt like hours, barely blinking, just replaying that moment outside the coffee shop over and over again in my mind. Jason, laughing softly, leaning in, eyes warm, the kind of look he hadn't given me in months. And not just to anyone. It was her. The woman I saw last month in one of Jason's work party photos on Facebook. A coworker, someone he swore he barely spoke to. Now that same woman had just shattered the last bit of doubt I had left. But before I could even decide what to do next, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was Marcus. "We need to talk. It's about your husband." The message made my chest tighten. I didn't know if I should laugh, cry, or panic. The man who had nearly crossed the line with me just days ago now wanted to warn me about Jason? It didn't make sense. But curiosity overruled logic. I told Marcus to meet me at the park near our building, somewhere public, somewhere neutral. We sat on a quiet bench under a tree. He looked different this time. Not so confident, not so playful. There was a serious weight in his eyes. "I didn't mean to get involved," he said, voice low. "I didn't come up to your place that night by accident." I blinked. "What?" He sighed and looked away for a moment. "Angela, my ex, she's been watching Jason for weeks. She's convinced he's the reason we split. Said she found something on his phone months ago during a meeting at their office. Messages. Calls. Hotel receipts. Jason and her. Together. While we were still married." My heart dropped. I stared at him, trying to breathe, trying to process what he was saying. "You're telling me Jason was with Angela while she was still married to you?" He nodded slowly. "And she wanted to get even. Said she needed you to know the truth. That's why I came over. That's why I got close." The betrayal hit me like a punch to the chest. I couldn't even find the words. All this time, I thought I was the one drifting. I thought I was the one crossing lines. But Jason had been living a double life long before I even let Marcus touch my shoulders. Still, something didn't sit right. "So you were just part of some twisted plan to expose him?" I asked. "I didn't plan to feel guilty," Marcus muttered. "But I do. I thought maybe you deserved the truth. Angela, she's not done." Those last words stayed with me. Not just the betrayal from Jason, but now the realization that I had been used by Marcus and Angela to unravel something much bigger. Whatever Angela was planning next, it wasn't going to stop at exposing an affair. This was about revenge. And I was now stuck in the middle of a war I never asked to be in. I left the park with my mind spinning and my heart pounding. Everything I thought I knew about my life, about my marriage, was unraveling by the minute. I wanted to confront Jason right then, but something Marcus said kept echoing in my head, "Angela's not done." That one sentence stopped me. It made me wonder if walking into that apartment now would mean stepping straight into something I wasn't ready for. Still, I couldn't just sit on the truth. That night, I waited for Jason to fall asleep. I unlocked his phone, not out of spite, but because I needed to see it for myself. The messages were there. Weeks worth. Angela, saved under a fake name, but the tone was unmistakable. The plans. The lies. The hotel bookings. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the evidence of his other life, my throat tightening with every word. The next morning, I didn't say a word to Jason. I went through the day like I always did, routine, calm, controlled. But inside, I was preparing for what had to be done. I texted Angela. Meet me. No games. Just you and me. We met in a quiet coffee shop. She looked sharper than I remembered, eyes hard like someone who had spent too much time hiding pain behind strategy. I cut to the chase. Why come after me? Why pull Marcus into this? Angela sipped her drink slowly before replying. Because I knew you wouldn't believe it if it just came from me. I needed you to feel what I felt. Did you ever think maybe I already did? I asked, my voice shaking. She didn't respond. Just stared at me, maybe realizing for the first time that I wasn't just some clueless wife in the background. I was someone who had been hurt too, maybe in different ways, but still deeply. I left that conversation without yelling, without tears. Just clarity. I went home, packed a small bag, and waited for Jason. When he walked through the door, I handed him his phone. You can keep the lies. I'm done living in them. He didn't deny it. Didn't fight. Just stood there like a man who finally got caught in a web he built too tightly around himself. But just when I thought it was over, I got one more message, this time from an unknown number. You were never supposed to find out. This isn't over. Attached was a photo, taken through the window of the coffee shop. Me and Angela, mid-conversation. Someone had been watching us. And suddenly, I realized, maybe Angela wasn't the one pulling all the strings after all. I stared at that photo for a long time, my fingers tightening around the phone. Someone had been watching me and Angela. Not just that moment, but likely everything leading up to it. I felt cold all over. I thought I had uncovered all the secrets, thought the lies had finally surfaced, but this photo proved there was still another layer. And I was exhausted. I didn't want to play detective anymore. I didn't want to live inside the wreckage of betrayal, revenge, and second-guessing. I took a deep breath, saved the photo, and turned off my phone. That night, I booked a short stay at a quiet cabin 2 hours away. No plans, no distractions, just space. I left Jason a simple note. It didn't contain anger or accusations. Just a few lines telling him I needed time, and that I wasn't coming back to a life built on broken trust. I wasn't running away, I was choosing peace. Sometimes, walking away is the strongest thing you can do when love turns into something unrecognizable. During those few days in the cabin, I sat with myself. I cried, I reflected, I wrote down every confusing thought until it didn't feel so heavy. And somewhere between the silence of the trees and the honesty I had avoided for too long, I found clarity. Angela had her reasons. Marcus had his guilt. Jason had made his choices. But none of that defined who I was. And while I didn't know who sent that final message or why they were watching me, I made peace with the unknown. Not every question needs an answer to move forward. Before I left the cabin, I blocked the number that had sent the photo. Whatever game they were playing, I was no longer part of it. I didn't need the final twist to make sense of the story. I already knew what mattered. When I returned to the city, I found a small apartment of my own. Nothing fancy. Just mine. I started rebuilding slowly, coffee with old friends, yoga classes I had put off, even walking by myself through parks I used to avoid. Each step forward reminded me of who I was before everything got messy. And as for Jason, we didn't speak again, not for months. But one day, he sent a short email. No excuses. Just a quiet apology. I didn't respond. Some chapters deserve to end quietly. This wasn't the story I thought I'd be telling a year ago. I thought I had the perfect marriage. I thought loyalty was enough. But sometimes, the truth hides in the small things: a shoulder massage, a glance at a phone, a neighbor's knock on the door. And when it finally surfaces, it demands a choice. My choice was to let go. Not because I was weak, but because I finally saw my own strength. Infidelity hurts. Betrayal leaves scars. But healing? That's what makes the ending powerful. 17.